Today is Korach Sivan, Hatashin Ayin. This is Shir Klali of Rav Gafni for Parshas Korach.
Right, so we're turning the Parsha Korach, to chapter Yud Zayin, Pasuk Tes Zayin. So this is already after the whole parsha, which tells us of Machlekes Korach, al Moshe Rabbeinu v'Aaron, and his attempt to persuade them and to persuade the Klal Yisrael that he was also able to be a kohen. In other words, he wanted the Indian for him and for Zara, the Indian kahuna. It wasn't enough just the Indian of being a Levi, he wanted also kahuna. And then after that, we see that eventually the Eibishter brought about the Pesichas Ha'oretz, and there was an Indian from Blias, Adas Korach, called Adosom. The Shaila being whether the Bnei Korach, the actual sons of Korach themselves, they did tshuva, Kemuhu in the Gemara and other places, and therefore they didn't get completely swallowed. Over the other, the 250 ish, either they were burnt or they were nivla in B'tei Ha'oretz. And then following that, there's a big complaint on the part of the Yidden. So that was in at the beginning of the chapter 17. Vayilenu kol adas b'nei Yisrael mimocharat al Moshe v'Aaron leimoyer atem hamitem es am Hashem. They claimed and complained that Moshe and Aaron had put literally to death the Jewish people, particularly for the Leviim, what they were a leading and chosen tribe within the Yidden. So then, following that, there's a plague, a further punishment descended on the Jewish people because of that, and Aaron, HaKohen, was amongst the people with the Keteris, and was machaper, whatever that involved, on the people, and caused the ceasing and the cessation of the plague. Following that, we find that the Eibishter, in the parsha which we're going to pay attention to, adds a further, what that itself is a discussion. If there'd already been these visitations and punishments, and what do we need a further proof for? However, without going into all that for the moment, the Eibishter adds a further and final proof that Aaron and his descendants, they've been chosen to be the Kohanim. And that begins with where we're holding now, Chamishi, but that's also the Chittas for today. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe leimer daber b'nei Yisrael v'kach mi'itom matei leveis or me'eis kol nesi'ehem leveis aveisom shnayim so mateis. That you must take from the Yidden a staff. How do you call it? A piece of, like a mateh means a stick, one for each base of, from all of their Nasiim, the princes of the tribes, with the 12 tribes. Lefizeh, we have to say that we reckoned Yosef, which was divided, be Emes Beneged to Nachlo, Yosef was divided into 2 tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh. But since you count here only 12, then we have to say that Yosef was only one mater, and Levi was another mater, and the names of the Nasim were written, and on the one to Levi was written Aaron's name. The Shem Aaron, that's what he says now, Tiktev al Matei Levi. Ki Matei Echad L'Reish Beis Aveso. That there's only one staff required for the head of the house of Levi. So why does the Torah have to tell me that? Because there are two sections in Levi. There's Kohanim and Leviim. So it's enough. One staff, even though there are two sections in the Leviim. And Aaron's name, what he's the Kohen, that'll be written, and he's considered like the Nasi of Shevet Levi. V'hinachtom bo'el meid lefnei ha'edus, and you must put them in the oil meid in front of the oren containing the luches. Asher yivoed lechem shomer, that's where I speak to you, I meet up with you, Kaviocho, over there. That's to say, inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim in the Mishkan. V'hoyo ho'ish asher evcha boi matehu yifrach, or yifrach. And behold, the person that I'm going to actually choose for the kahuna, his matei will bring flowers. How do you call it? It'll give out flowers. And through that I'll be able to take away completely all the complaints that the Yidden are complaining, Asherim Alinim Aleichem, meaning Al Moshe ve'Aaron. V'yidaber Moshe b'nei Yisrael, and they gave him, each one of them, gave him their stars or their mateis, and Moshe put them in the oil moed lifnei. We're just starting, we're already finishing. Is b'oil moed lifnei ha'edus. He put them in front of the Kodesh. Vayhi mimocharos, and on the morrow, vayovi Moshe el ha'edus, v'hinei Korach matei Aaron lebeis Levi. The staff of Aaron from the house of Levi had brought forth flowers. Korach, it means it began to bloom with flowers. Vayotzei perech, and it brought forth, the blooms. What are the things called? The things around the center of a flower. What are they called?
Blossoms.
Blossoms, yeah, the leaves of the blossoms of the flower. Vayotzei tzitz, vayigmel shkeidim, and it came to even more than just flowers, but it came to giving what's called the nito. How do you call it?
Almonds.
No. It sort of it went even further, but that's mamish, the flowers, and that's when the flowers begin to fall, and there remains like a sort of a thing from the middle of the flower on the branch. By Yigmel Shkeitim, and it brought forth almonds. In other words, it went through the whole process. First of all, it was like a beginning of a budding. Then it was the flower itself came out with its I've forgotten the word. And then Yotzei Tzitz, it produced what is the beginning of the fruits. And then it actually caused fruits to grow out. And Yigmel Shkeidim means that it actually became a whole egg, a whole eshker, like a whole bunch of shkeidim, and they all sort of hung down like a bunch of fruits, shkeidim, didn't they? Vayoytze Moshe es kol hamateis milifnei Hashem el kol bnei Yisrael vayiru, and they saw, vayichu ish matei, and each person took the matei that he'd given. So according to the Das Akanim of the Valley Ateisaves, he says that all this happened very swiftly and by way of Ness in front of everybody's eyes. In other words, that Moshe Rabbeinu came in and he saw that the mate of Aaron had caused a flower to come out. It had already started to flower. And he took the mate in order to bring it out and show it to everybody. And during his taking it out, and particularly at the moment of his showing to the Yid, it did all the rest. How do you call it? It brought out the full flower, and then it made the nitzah, and then it became fruit. All in a few, as it were, minutes, and that was the nest. The nest was that it all happened tremendously, miraculously, that everybody would be able to see that it produced from the beginning of a bud the shkeidim in a miraculous minute-governed flowing. And it's also brought down in a Medrash Rabbah and the Chaim HaKodesh. Another Meforshim bring the Medrash, and they say that Moshe Rabbeinu was very careful when he made the sticks, that he took them all from one piece of wood. All the sticks were all cut off from one piece of wood, so that nobody would be able to say, oh, why did Aaron's grow? It was a very special type of wood that he took, and we had just an ordinary piece of wood. We had that piece of wood, so everybody got exactly the same wood, and they got a dry stick. They cut the 12 staves from dry wood. In other words, nobody would be able to say, well, that wood was moist, and that's why it was in a closed place overnight, and it started to that there should be no possibility of any Tevadik explanation offered by anybody who wanted to blow the effect. It was all the same dry pieces of wood, and that was the nest that Aaron's mate nonetheless gave forth a flower, and it eventually brought the shkeidim. So we see that there was several nisim involved, that a dry piece of wood, first of all, produced moisture in itself and produced flour, and then from the flour it ran swiftly through all the other stages, and it became a bunch of shkeidim hanging at the end, at the top of the mate. Now, some people want to suggest that actually it was two stages that happened. Some of the great Rishonim bring down that there's a very interesting, in Pirkei Avos, it's brought down in Perek Chamishi, that there are 10 things that were created Erev Shabbos Beina Shmoshes, right at the end of the 6 days of creation. And one of them, according to certain opinions, don't sit like that if you don't mind. No, not that way either. I don't mind you putting your arm on the table, but your chumash is not to blame. But according to certain people, it's not one of the 10 mentioned in the actual Pirkei Avos, but it occurs in a brisa brought in the Gemara Masechta Pesachim, that one of the things that was created on Erev Shabbos Bein Hashmoshes was the Mate Aaron. And it was written that it was created altogether already with the flowers and with the shkeidim, as they state the Lashon Procheya ve Shkeideha. So since it's written here that the shkeidim came only after the tzitz, and Rashi says that the pre-shaperach noifel, that in order to get a fruit, the flower has to fall off. So why does it say Procheya ve Shkeideha? The Procheya was only a stage, but later its finality was just only shkeidim. And so if we're going to say that that's what was created, Bein Hashmoshes, then it wasn't created a flower. The flower was just like a middle point to get to the shkeidim. And so we have to say then that either the brisa means that it was created with the protein, but that carried the possibility of the shkeidim. So therefore, certain people want to say that there was a flower and shkeidim. There remained always a flower at the top, and there also grew out of another flower shkeidim. And there's several Maimonic Chazal, what they deal with this, and it's written that Melech HaMashiach, interestingly enough, the Balaturim brings that when Melech HaMashiach, that's what he calls him, Melech HaMashiach, when he comes, he will be carrying, one of the things he will carry is the Mate Aaron. He'll bring this Mate, and it will be Prochea Vishkei Teya. It will be carrying the flowers and the Shkeidim. But that tends to indicate that some flowers remain, even though Rashi says normally the flowers fall off in order to give rise to the Shkeidim. So there's some Indian there that is a very important in and of a perak, the concept of flowering forth. Together with that, the Indian of Shkeidim, and that's one of the things that Melech HaMashiach will bring back into its full status, is the Indian HaKahuna, because to this day there's still a lot of somewhat confusion when they get due to all the Golas and all the Tzores, all the other Inyanim, who are actually the real Mishpachis HaKoyanim, and if they only have a Chazoko, if they have an Emes, and knowledge that they are Koyanim from way back to, but there are a few such families throughout the world. I think in here in Eretz Yisrael there's a few. What they claim that they have letters and documents that go all the way back close to Aaron HaKohen. So, yeah, it's pretty clear that they're Emes Kohanim. And the other Kohanim, they are what's called a Chazokah. We assume, due to the fact that it was passed on through the family for several generations, and it gains what's called an assumption, a halakhic assumption that they're Kohanim. However, Mashiach is going to bring back the real Kahuna. He'll bring it back to its real place. So one of the things that he'll be carrying will be this Mate Aaron Procheva Shkeideho. So comes along Rashi. Rashi says, why did it have to give forth Shkeidim? What's the meaning of almonds? What's so special that the proof of Aaron's being the real Kahuna came? The real Kohen and his generations are going to be the Emes Kohanim. Why did it come in the form of almonds? So Rashi says, Kishahuka hapri, once the pri was recognized, hukar, it was recognized, she'ein shkeidim. However, we see that Rashi brings the expression vayigmoel shkeidim, that it literally bore or gave birth, like almost, or it sort of somehow or another matured the Indian of shkeidim. So now the fact that Rashi says kishuhuka hapri, huka shehein shkeidim, well, that would tend to indicate that Rashi, like in his previous state, he went through a whole natural process here, that everything happened, but it just happened very quickly. First of all, there was a little bloom, and then there was a flower, then the flower fell, and then there was this remains of the flower, and then it grew into the fruits. Yeah, the whole process happened, so it was only after the process was in the process that they could see that it was shkeidim. Right from the beginning, they didn't know it was shkeidim. So therefore Rashi learns that it was like a miraculous thing, but it went through a series of natural processes that just moved in a miraculous speed. Huke shehein shkeidim, loshen vayigdal hayeled vayigomal. It's written by Yitzchak that he grew up and he was nurtured from his mother's milk. That's what it means. To be nigmal means that you finish drinking the mother's milk and you now become independent. So that's the same thing here. Vayigmel shkeidim, that the shkeidim became properly recognizable as permanent fruits. Such an inyan of being nurtured and becoming like an independent being is not only used by human beings but also in trees. We can say that it literally nurtures and gives forth an independent fruit. And therefore he brings a pasuk in Yeshaya Novi, or boisar, what that means, boisa is for grapes, that means an early stage of the grapes. Goimel, boisa goimel, yia nita. That the boisa goimel, it's gradually progressing, towards its nutriment, or it will appear in the place of the nitto. Instead of the nitto, the leftovers, that will appear. And it's interesting that pasuk is talking about Milchemes Gog Magog, according to Rashi. So we're running into Mashiach wherever we turn here. That pasuk is talking about the description of how the Milchemes Gog Magog will descend on Eretz Israel and on Jerusalem. Isn't it? So believe me, I would like to do the same thing. If I were to just close my eyes, I would probably go to sleep quicker than what you imagine you're doing now. Idafa, says Rashi, we see then that there can be such an inyan of being nurtured and producing shkedim. So now he says, V'loma shkedim, why dafke was the fruit that occurred on Aaron's thing. Now it's called goimel shkedim. We don't know why it's used the word nurturement, but why is it that it was dafke almonds? It was dafke shkedim. Hu hapri hamamahel hafriach mikol hapel. This is the pri which is swift to give its flower and mamela, its fruit, more than all the other fruit trees. And therefore, right at the beginning of the season, you see the almond trees already giving forth their what do you call it, their, what's your problem?
The air conditioning is blowing right on, it's very cold.
It's too cold?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that means that everybody has to suffer, they want to have an air conditioning. You're going to make it move the other way. Okay, good. The Mamela says, Rashi, that the shakade is mamaya, it's swift than all the other paydays. And if you go out very early in the season over here, very early before Pesach, even in Adar, before the actual spring begins, you already see the almond trees giving forth their blossoms. It's going on that they're very early and they're very swift in bringing forth their paydays. It says Rashi, Afa mo'irer ala kahuna puronose memaher slavoi. Anybody who claims against the kahuna, and he says, why should only the kohenim be kohenim? Why can't I be a kohen? And he complains, and he's ma'ira neg the kahuna, then his punishment is also swift. Yeah, puronose memaher slavoi. Are you sort of, so you have to have a chair to lean on and everything, you sort of looks as if you're just barely managing to hold yourself together over there. Are you all right?
I'm fully awake.
Huh?
I'm fully awake, Rabbi. You got my full attention. I'm fully awake.
Yeah, but you're sort of a rather super, informal situation. Anyway, we'll accept your assurance. So therefore he says, "V'afa ma'ira ala kahuna puronose memaheres lo." Yeah, lovei. Whoever is ma'ira against a kahuna, he will be swiftly punished. Now he's brought down in Divrei Hayom. That's a whole story without going into the background of it. But he was a leading person that he claimed that he should be a kohen. He claimed that he could also be he wanted to be a kohen and a kohen gadol, even though he wasn't actually from the Zerah HaKahuna with the whole thing. He wanted to use his protection, as they say, and his power, and he actually tried to assume being a kohen, and it's written that immediately that he finished taking that action, that a leprosy, had he called like one of the netzoras, zorcha b'mitzchoy, it sort of shined immediately on his forehead, and he became a metzora. Yeah, tzoras zorcha b'mitzchoy. Sure. What's that, Khan? Is Rashi Benegel Inyonenu. Then Rashi brings the Targum. Oh, that's got to do with a slightly different issue. And Rashi would, I don't want to go into too many Inyonim which are not dealing with the main point of the class. So we see that Rashi learns that the remez of Shkedim, and why it had to be that the proof of the kahuna was through an appearance, miraculously, of almonds, to prove to you what happens to those who they oppose the kahuna, or jealous of the kahuna, or in any way ma'arer, they work against, or they try to claim counter to the right of the kohanim to the kahuna. In other words, a negative inyan. That the main inyan of the shkedim was to indicate a cholila, a swiftness of what you might call divine retribution. And the far with that Uziah over there in Divrei Hayomim, it also, if you study the Indian carefully, which is not the place to go into it all here, it also happened very quickly after he actually made the step of trying to assume kahuna, that he immediately became Rachmanin Klan, he became Matzorah. Come along certain other Mephoshim, and they want to suggest that the symbol of the Shkedim is in another direction, not so much a negative direction of those who claim against the kahuna. Listen, maybe you take that rather silly grin off your face, okay? The whole time you're just grinning around people. I don't see any necessity for it. Okay? Edify, they say that the Indian is indicatory of Indian in the Kohanim themselves, or Indian in the etim makeup of what a Amos Kohen really is. And that's the Indian, you may have heard about it, the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos, and in other places in Masechta Beita, I don't know, you guys are learning Beita, that the Kohanim Zurizim Haim, the Kohanim are very energetic and very swift-moving people. And over the Gemara brings sometimes certain statements. In the Beis HaMikdash, some things were done, and it's almost it's very difficult to imagine how it could be done so swiftly. You know, it must have taken more time. And the Gemara says, no, you don't have to worry, because the Kohanim Zerizim Haim, the Kohanim were very, very active, and they were tremendously swift-moving and energetic, and how to call it, no hesitation, klau in what they did. And the fact comes again, how do you call him, the Chizkuni, one of the very early period commentators, saying that the three different things, the flowers and the tzitz and the shkedim, are all indicatory of different types of kohanim. That the Gemara talks about what's called pirchei kahuna. The pirchei kahuna were like the young youth of the Kohen here. And they used to, wherever their fathers and that were serving, in the they used to go with them, and there used to be this big bunch of young chevra that they were called pirchei kahuna. And they used to sort of be present in the mikdash, and they were learning, and they were watching, and they were tremendously sharp people. And it's the young kohanim. That was brought down if a guy brought his korban into the, a man would come with his chatos or something, and the pirchei kahuna would sort of give him, they say, oh, here you are with your chatos, oh boy, we know who you are, we know what you're up to. He would have to sort of put up with apart from bringing the korban, he would have to put up with a certain bizoyin, which was no doubt good for him. Baruch Niyat, the pirchei kahuna were very sharp, very energetic young members of the kahuna. And they did all sorts of amazingly good things, apart from being a little bit sharp with some of them, maybe a korban.
They were like younger light or bocher?
They were bocher. Yeah, okay. They were bocher. Yeah. And it's also brought down in the Gemara Masechta Tainis that Rachmanin Islam, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, then some of the pirchei kahuna took the keys of the Azorah, and they went up onto the Gag of the Beis HaMikdash, and they literally threw them into the air and said to the Yevish, you must take back your keys. The pirchei kahuna, and then Rachmanin Islam, they jumped down into the fire, a whole group of them. And it's written in the Gemara over there that a hand came out from heaven and took the keys. Oh, amazing statement of the Gemara with Shen Kana Makom Laharik was there, but that's the Pirchei Kahuna. And then you have the union of the Kohen Godel. Once the Pirchei Kahuna became big and they became Kohanim, then one of them had to be a Kohen Godel, and he used to wear the tzitz. You know what the tzitz was, the metal crown rather that he used to wear over his forehead with Kodesh Lashem written on it. That was called the tzitz. So the word tzitz is indicative of another Indian in the Kahuna, the Kohen Gadol with the tzitz. And then he says the Indian from Yigmel Shkedim is indicative of every Kohen, that every Kohen was a Zoris. He was he brings also that the Shkedim, they came out swifter than all the other fruits, and every Kohen was very, very, there was absolutely no hesitation or moving or messing around. And if you study the whole Indian of the Korban Pesach, that they used to bring it in 3 kittes, the Korban Pesach, it's written that from the moment they closed the doors of the Azorah on the first group until they opened, the second was an amazing short amount of time, that they were makriv all these Korbanos Pesach, and they had to sing the Hallel with the whole thing. And it's written that they never actually sang the Hallel 3 times full while they were offering up all the Korbanos from the first kit or the second kit, because the Kohanim was so swift moving, they were so zrizim. So that's a pretty amazing statement. So that was just the Chizkuni, that's indicative of Yigmel. Yigmel Shkedim indicates the etzem makeup of a Kohen, the etzem pnimius and the etzem hanhoge of a Kohen, that he's a ish zoris betachlit. In other words, he's not sloughing around in the morning and all the rest of it. He's there and he's, functioning with tremendous power. Comes along another Seibor I saw, and he takes that principle and he says that that's the reason why it's so important here, the appearance of the Shkedim on the Makel, because the whole Indian here was that Korach also he wanted to taina that Aaron is just a Kohen, because you and Aaron want COVID, you want to be the leaders of the people. Why can't we be the leaders? Everybody was there at Matan Torah and everybody heard the Dvar Hashem. So Korach was taining that you guys are just chasing after your own COVID and your own leadership. And this particular sefer that I saw is masbir that somebody who does something only for COVID, he's not usually he's not anxious to put a lot of energy into it. He's only anxious to do certain inyonim and get all the pictures in the paper and gain all the COVID and whatever other material benefits might come together with the COVID v'ka'ita b'zeh. Of somebody who does the whole inyam mireisha ad sefer with tremendous devotion, and he doesn't care about any inyonim, but he's only doing it with the most utmost of his energy and his strength to the point of almost unnatural swiftness. Well, that's a sign that he's doing it for the emes Shem Shemayim, for the emes intention, the COVID of Hashem, not of his own COVID. Therefore, the whole Moshe was Dafki Yigmel Shkedim. It indicated the union of the Zrizos, the Kohanim, Lemal Yusa, answered to Korach, that you can see that the Kohanim be emes lamito emes, not for their own COVID, chas v'sholem. So, Lefize, that's a new step forward, that the union, the Shkedim is already a positive union. It's not an union of Baronias, but it's a tchuna in the Kohanim Atzmon, and in their oven of function, and it becomes a big cloud in the Beis HaMikdash that you can rely that things are going to be done, because Kohanim is rizim. Comes along now the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah, what is a Maimon at the end of Pasha Korach, from the Alter Rebbe on this inyan of Vayifrach Mate Aaron v'yoytze tzitz with all the inyonim v'hinei porach Mate Aaron leveis Levi v'yoytze perach It comes along the Alter Rebbe dealing mostly also with the concept of the Shkedim. And he brings down a medrash, which Rashi brings in a place in Yirmiyahu Hanavi. Rashi brings it, and the medrash says a fascinating thing. We're approaching that part of the year, but the Eivishter can help us. That if we will say we want Moshiach now, not just that we'll talk about Moshiach, and not just that we'll be Yetzer with certain inyonim, but we will say be'emes we want Moshiach now, then Hashem will help that we won't come to it. But there's a period which could be approaching, Chas v'Sholem, and that is from Shiva Asa B'Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, but that's 21 days. So says the Medrash, right near the end of Medrash Kohelet, says the Medrash that shaked almond, from the moment that it begins to be yotzet, it begins to form the fruit, and the perich is dropped, until the appearance of a reddish almond to eat is 3 weeks, and that's much more than other peiros in Eretz, like olives and other famous peiros. They take much longer to actually ripen, for the fruit to appear and to ripen. Mashenkin of Shaked does it in, the whole process takes only 3 weeks, and you've got a finished and eatable Shaked from the moment that the perich falls. So therefore said the Medrash, that's what Yirmiyahu Hanavi says, that he says right at the beginning, in the first chapter of Yirmiyahu, that the Eivishter says to him, tell me, what do you see? And he showed him a makel shaked. He showed him a stick with a branch with almonds on it. And the Eivishter said, why is it almonds? Ki shoyked ani al dvari la seisei, that I'm going to be very quick and swift, and I really am attending to what I'm doing swiftly and undelayedly. And over there, Chalila doesn't mean good. It means the Indian of the approaching Churban of the Beis Hamikdash, which Yirmiyahu was warned and he shouted so much about. Well, Terech Hagav, just by way of in brackets, you may have noticed, or maybe your minds were working on it, that the word shkido in a yeshiva lashon, where you talk about a bocher that he learns, b'shkido b'hasmoda, is from the same root word. It's from the word shaked, means a swift fruit. So a person who's a baal shkido, he's not just someone who learns the whole time, but he learns with energy, and he tries to move and take in the svaras quickly, and to move on to a new Indian, and not to waste his time. Therefore, you notice whenever the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach gave people brachas to be matzliach in the yeshiva, he would say, "Zol lernen basmada v'shkida." The Rebbe said it to many bachrim that you should learn with hasmada and with shkida, and that's the same process, the same basic concept that we're talking about here from the word shaked, meaning an almond. You have to learn, swiftly, like the almond comes out, and that's what the Eivishter said to Yirmiyahu Hanavi. Why did I show you it? Because Chodila, it's going to happen very quickly, and that's what Rashi says over there. Rashi says that was in a way a maila, it had a certain rachamim, that the whole gezerah only took 3 weeks, from Shiva Asa B'Tammuz to the actual destruction. It didn't go on years of terrible. The suffering was terrible, but it all occurred in 3 weeks. And the Father Rashi, that was the idiom from shoyked ani al dvari. Over there it's idiom from Rachmani Nikla. Comes along the Alter Rebbe and he says, what is this Indian of the shaked indicating swiftness in this whole Indian here of the indication that Aaron was the Emes HaKohen? Alter Rebbe says a very amazing klal, which takes us further, not a punishment of those who complain about the kuna, not something about the Etzem Kohanim themselves, but something about what do the Kohanim achieve, what is their achievement in Ruchnias, that everything achieved in Ruchnias by the Kohanim moves at great speed. And ever the Rebbe said that, normally speaking, Aaron, his Indian is chesed, as it brought down in Pasha Ba'aloischa, that Aaron's Inyan is the Inyan of Chesed. Because therefore Aaron is connected with, as it was one that he was Mekarev Abriyos, or Mekarev on Latoira, Oyev Abriyos. But Aaron's Inyan, the Alter Rebbe brings in Perek Lamed Beis, in Tanya, that Aaron's Inyan was Chesed. And so we find that the Inyan for Chesed is got to come down all the way from Olam HaAtzilus, or maybe even higher, as we'll see in a second. It's got to come down through many, many descents, and it's got to become Chesed in this world. So in order to do that, it's got to go through a whole series of Ishtalshalas. Because the Eibishter, if he gave us out in Olam HaAtzilus, we just become Matthias with his Chesed. In order for it to become Chesed, which is, in some way limited to be able to come out and be Chesed in this world, but Korach on him, then it's got to go through a Seder Ishtalshalas. And so, once you start going through Seder Ishtalshalas, you go from Olam to Olam, you go through Sfiras HaChesed, you go through all sorts of different gradations, sometimes along the line, Sfiras HaGevura, or other combinations of Gevura, say, wait a minute, maybe Pliny is not really worthy that he should get this right now. Or maybe we should give it to him even acher, or maybe we shouldn't give it at all, etc., such that it can be what's called batidin, or what you might call gevuras and tzimtzumim, and what you might call tainas on the way. And that happens through the fact that it has to go down through a whole series of Seder Ishtalshalas. However, what is the inyan for Aaron? Aaron is the inyan for the swiftness. His inyan is shaked, the inyan of an almond, but that's the inyan for swiftness. When Aaron gives a blessing, or when Aaron does something in Ruchnias, then the mashmoras of that inyan comes down swiftly all the way through Seder Ishtalshalas, and it doesn't pause for 1 minute. It goes all the way down, and it becomes a Chesed Zoris. Take a like the Kohanim themselves as Rizim, or it becomes an inyan for Chesed Miyadiyas, immediate and prompt Chesed in the world, Mamish Kipshute. Therefore, we see that in the Birchas Kohanim it's written Vayivarecha Hashem Vayishma. Rashi says Yivarecha B'Momik. Momik means geld. A person should have else what he needs. Begashmias Kipshute. Vayishmarecha. Others should get their hands on it that don't belong. Rashi says Yishmarecha Min HaShoidedim. There shouldn't be night robbers and how they call them, the renegades, or the Jesse James, or all these sort of things. They shouldn't be coming for you and taking away the moment that was given to you. And if I yishmarecha mina shoidetim. So we see it's inyanim mamish pashtas lamata in the world, and it comes all the way down in an even that the Kohanim say, like we pointed out before in one of the previous shurim, Yivarecha Cho, it's like a Russian tzivui, that Hashem will do this, bli safek. Edify, says the Alter Rebbe, that's because it comes with tremendous swiftness, and it doesn't sort of wait or hold back anywhere in Seder Ishtalshalas, and it's not held or in any way subjected to all the tainas of Seder HaIshtalshalas. And that's the greatness of Aaron, and that's his inyan of Chesed. And so the Alter Rebbe is mazva because Aaron is not ordinary Chesed, no, he's what we call Rav Chesed. And the Alter Rebbe Pasha Ba'aloischa was marich in that barichas and Likutei Torah, that ordinary Chesed is from Atzilus. That's also tremendous Chesed. Of a Rav Chesed is Chesed l'mayla me'Atzilus altogether, and that is just so beyond all the Ishtalshalas that once that starts going, literally nothing can really stand in its way. It's so massive in its pneumatic toike, and in its unlimited purpose and its unlimited content, that it just goes down with an ein b'koyach, how you might call to get in the way. And that is the energy, Kaviochel, that the Kohanim, literally, that they let loose in their hashpah. That when they give Birchas Kohanim, or when they do anything, the Beis HaMikdash, or their mamsh anything. Alidei Hakrobas HaKorbanos or Ka'itzav for the sake of the Klal Yisrael, that it all comes down beribui hashpoa, in kamos, as you might say, in quantity, and in the oifan, that it goes down uninterruptedly and swiftly with mahirut. So therefore, midah keneged midah, like we began with Rashi, that if anybody tries to be mo'er neged the kahuna, then cholil v'chaz, it can swing back the other way. Also, b'mahirut in etzem ha'inyan, it's this unlimited, tremendous power to come down in an unlimited and swift. It doesn't hold back in any of the Seder HaHishtaushlet. And so the Alter Rebbe brings on that a very interesting inyan that the Gemara brings in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, that everything we have all the year has been decided on Rosh Hashanah. That the Gemara says that Parnasasya Shel Adam or Mo'esav Shel Adam Kfutzim Loi Rosh Hashanah. And there's a din mishpat on Rosh Hashanah v'chulu. So it would seem to that whatever you're going to have the whole year, it's already decided on Rosh Hashanah. Comes along the Gemara Masechta Rosh Hashanah, brings several days that Rabbi Nosson and Rabbi Yossi, or they say no, that you judged every day. That Adam nidoin b'chol yoim. You every day it's decided what you're going to be given for that day. And Rabbi Nosson says every day it's decided what you're going to be given for those hours. And he said every hour is like a new din b'chesbei. I closed the door, that doesn't look good. Hello, I expect you back. Because it occurs sometimes that he doesn't. It follows that on Rosh Hashanah, according to the Gemara, we're given everything. According to Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Nosson, we only get, according to every day, what we're worth. So the Alter Rebbe is mafalpel over there, even b'derech hanigla, how that all implies. But what it boils down to is that the opinion of our Rebbeim and that whole thing is put down in Kuntres Umayim. You guys have heard of you learned it in Kuntres Umayim. The Rebbe Rashab brings it down in Kuntres Umayim, and he also discusses it in some detail, and he says that everybody agrees about everything, really. And it's like not a machlokes. This is a famous opinion, based on a famous opinion in a sefer called the Asora Mamores, that was written by the Ramah Mipano. And he was an unbelievable Goen Benigla Nista. He reaches the conclusion that everybody doesn't disagree with anybody. Everybody says one thing, but they all agree with the other. It's not really a machlokes. It's like each one introducing a new inyan that everybody really agrees with. So it doesn't look so simple at first glance, but that's the way they learn it. So everybody agrees that you do get on Rosh Hashanah, but you also get every day. So what does the Alter Rebbe say? How does that work? So he said Rosh Hashanah is like putting it in your some big account. It's gone like into your account. But are you actually going to be able to draw it out? Are you going to be able to write on every day when you need? Are you going to be able to draw your check for that day? Or what was given? Well, that's going to depend on a more detailed din that goes on the whole time. And you're judged every day, or maybe even every hour. Are you worthy of what's really waiting for you up there? And it might start coming down, but then somewhere in say the Shtaushler, something will get in the way. And I say, well, wait a minute, he should get this. And there's a whole series of discussions in the Seder Hishtaushlet, and then, well, part of it true. Or we want to make it all in Gashmi Scripture, we'll make it more in Ruchnis, and maybe he might be able to appreciate that, etc. I know it's even in Kuntres Umayim, the Rebbe talks about it over there. So, Kuntres, that to get what's really yours and was really decided in the Aseret Yemei Tshuva, to get it, you've got to have, you've got to be worthy. That's why we pray every day, give us this and give us something else. But that's one of the proofs that everybody has to agree. Edify, that's where the Kohanim come in. And if you get a bracha from a Kohen, that's much for the Alter Rebbe. Or if you're a Kohen yourself and you're acting the right way, then it all goes very swift. And what was written for you on Rosh Hashanah, bli shum safek, that it'll come down and it'll come quickly and promptly at the time it's supposed to come, if you have the Kohanim backing you. So now we understand why it's good to be good with a Kohen. You have to sort of get into his good books and have a bracha from him and so on. A Kohen, it's a big thing, The people used to say, a Kohen, they used to treat very, very seriously. The Rebbe, with tremendous seriousness. The Rebbe used to encourage, Ben Zerah Kohen, Rav Kohen comes into the Zal. The Rebbe said to him in Yechidus, do you bless Jews? The Rebbe asked him, do you actually bless a lot of Jews? You're a Kohen, you have to bless it, and you have to make sure that you give them brachas. And so he's very proudly ready to carry that out. So Chafarayan asked him for a bracha, and he got a ziruz, and he's supposed to be a zoris because he's a Kohen, but the Rebbe gave him a ziruz that he should be more energetic in that particular matter. And in fact, we see that it's good to be good with a Kohen. And then, Ali Dezeh, you can sort of gain a surety that it's all going to come down. Whatever you got on Rosh Hashanah, it's not going to be held up in Seder Ha'ir. It's going to come down Mahiro, Yorod, and the Alter Rebbe brings over the Sukkim and amazing Lashonas. It really is a remarkable Maimah there in the Likutei Torah. And the Rebbe has got a big, famous Maimah which is printed in Chelik Dalet of the Maimorim Melukotim, Korach Sivan. The Rebbe gave it. That was the Maimah he gave out for Korach Sivan. Vehina Korach Mate Aaron. And the Rebbe deals over with this whole union of the different opinions of Rebbe Nathan, Rebbe Yosef, and so on and so on. And then he deals with this mahirus and the swiftness, with the different things that the Alter Rebbe brings, and the Rebbe goes into more detail, Kedach and B'Kodesh. So that's one of the makoiris of the type of beer. And then in Toshim Mem Aleph, the Rebbe's got another Maimah, much shorter Maimah on that union, and he says a very interesting chiddush in that Maimah, which I'm just going to give over in a minute. Follows Lefizeh that Kohanim are a source of a tremendous power of swiftness, coming from a very high madrega all the way down into Taktius, Olam Ha, Ashia, Mamish, Kivshute. So, what does that come to teach us? So therefore, a thought occurred to me that, to my tremendous modest joy, I saw that, in effect, the Rebbe says it in that moment, in Toshim Memal. We're all Kohanim. Matan Torah, what was the difference between the Jewish people and everybody? What was the Atavochatanu Mikol Ha'amim, the etzem difference between Yidden and non-Yidden and Nish-Yidden that occurred on Matan Torah? Because that's the Ikar choice. The Ikar Atavochatanu was at Matan Torah. The Ikar choice, we could suggest, is Atem Tiyuli Mamleches Kohanim, will be a kingdom of priests. That's what the Abba said just before he gave the Torah. And Agoy Kodesh, you will be a holy people, a people of holiness. Agoy Kodesh. And in fact, we could suggest that Mamleches Kohanim means that all Yidden are Kohanim. All Yidden are Mamish Kohanim, in the sense that their whole life and their whole being is only to serve the Abba. What is a Kohen? A Kohen is a man that his whole union is to serve. His whole union is to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, and he doesn't have any other union in life. He doesn't even, as we see here in the parsha and other parshas, he doesn't have any panosa, only what he gets from the Yidden, trumas and nochazol chinyonim, and mataneis kahuna, the 24 gifts that are given to the kahuna. That's their whole parnasa. Apart from that, they don't really have any, they're not supposed to have. I mean, they can maybe do a bit of business or things on the side, but they're not allowed to work the ground in Eretz Yisrael. They're not allowed to have any ground at all. And Lafisa, a kohen is his whole life is service. Oimed Shom, as it's written in Parsha Shaitim and Sefer Dvarim, a kohen is a man where he's Oimed Shom l'shores es Hashem. He's standing there in order to give service to the Eivishter, l'shores es Havai. And therefore, the Kohanim were originally the ones who were the Rabbonim. They were the ones who used to paskin all the shaylas. And they were the ones who used to give all the heroes. And therefore we see it's a very fascinating thing that many, many great poiskim and people, the Deiros, were Kohanim. For example, the Shach, you guys learned, you're there, the Shach was a Kohen. And let's say we find in many of the great poiskim that they were either Leviim, and the Taz was a Levi, if I'm not mistaken. So the Taz was a Levi and the Shach was a Kohen, that we see that it fell to the Leviim and the Kohanim, because their whole Indian was the Beis HaMikdash, it fell to them to be the Poiskim. And then we find that the Bnei Yisoscha, they were also Bnei Torah. Over their greatness as Talmidei Chachamim was in certain inyanim, like the Kiddush HaChodesh and other inyanim. But to be, simple lawgivers and deciders and paskiners for the Jewish people, als Klau, was Kohanim and Levi. We find many of the great, Shilas and Chuvas and the great Poiskim and the great Maforshim, that they were either Kohanim or Levi. But anyway, Belila Kenes Lazer, that's a whole sector of Ifnei Atzmai. And therefore we see that the whole Indian of a Kohen was to serve the Eivishter and to bring the Eivishter's Gilui to everybody. Other Yidden were his, as it were, Matorah, to bring Gilui Lakus in the world. And therefore a Kohen was Dafka Ish Chesed, Milmaila Mata, to bring everything, and with a swiftness that we see in this amazing Indian. And therefore, since we're all Kohanim, our whole Indian is to allow Micham, the Shoretz, the Savaya, in our own way. Each Yid became a Kohen. At Matan Torah, he became, as it were, like a Kohen, became Ma'ain, a Kohen. And I saw the Rebbe brings it down in that Maimon, Toshim Memala. The Rebbe says that those who've learnt these inyonim in Penimis HaTorah, and they've learned what it means to be a Kohen, you can't just sit around and, make benefit of your own ruchnias in a big base madrash somewhere in a quiet suburb where nobody disturbs you and you don't have any bilbulim or kayetivas there. No, then you have to be ready at the same time as learning. And at the same time you have to be ready to, as it were, give to other Yidden and be mamshit to them brachas. And the Rebbe says you even have to be mavorech es Yisrael. You have to give blessings to Yidden, because if a Yid gives a bracha, then he's like a Kohen. It's not mamish bilhas Kohanim. And if we see, it's an amazing thing. I mean, when you look at it every morning, it jumps out and hits you in the eye, doesn't it? That when you look in the Siddur and you say Bilchas HaTorah, and then you've got to learn some Torah, immediately you've said Bilchas HaTorah in order to not to say a bracha l'Torah. What do? You say Bilchas Kohanim. The first thing in the morning when you're going to be Yetzu with Limud HaTorah is you say Bilchas Kohanim with the whole lead up. Hashem, Al-Moshe Daber, Aaron Achicha, the whole thing. Yorach Hashem, Yishmarecha, Yor Hashem, V'geima. And it's one on that Reb Zusha, Reb Zusha, Napoleon, it's one on that in the mornings, he used to say Bilchas HaTorah, and then he would rush out into the street immediately and try and find a Yid, or he'd watch through the window and he'd see a Yid coming, then he'd make Bilchas HaTorah, and he would run out and he would say the Bilchas Kohanim to another. He didn't want to say it for himself, he wanted to say it to another person. So some great member of the Hasidic Revelations was told this story, and he said, well, today Yid, when he happened to Chap Rav Zusha in the morning, he said, to get a bracha, a bichas koyanim for Rav Zusha, first thing in the morning, he said, what a matzia. What an amazing matzia that would be. Anyway, we see that Rav Zusha took it, mamish kipshute, that he ran out into the street and he said, bichas koyanim to another Yid. So here in Krachabad, you don't have any problem. I'm telling you, if you're in a dormitory, you can be Yaiti, your Birchitz Torah was giving one of your Chaverim a bracha. The next thing people run around the dormitory, all showing one to the other Birchitz Kohanim, and they'll say that Gaffney brought in a new business here into the dormitory. Whatever. But however, Kach hoya min hagish Rav Zusha. Azoya tezek yifir. Anyway, Lafisa, the Rebbe says that we're all Mamlechas Kohanim, and we're all devoted to bringing the service of the Beis HaMikdash and bring it to other Yidden. And we have to do it in a way that Ad Mahero, that if we'll bring it and we'll mean with our Emes HaKavanah, then doubtless Hashem will give all the brachas and all the good things that are supposed to come from that giving to other Yidden, and Hashem will bring them swiftly and belishum hola and belishum ikuv b'seidah hishtalshelet. And the Rebbe adds there in the Maimah a tremendous chiddush. And he said the Alter Rebbe doesn't say in the Likutei Torah that the Kohanim cause it all to come down swiftly. If a man comes down this tremendous chesed elyon, or somewhere, comes down into the world and splashes here in the middle of a huge, so the Kedim wouldn't be a keli to be mekavel. Either you would get mavubu or you wouldn't even know that you've been given such a tremendous chesed. He said that the Alter Rebbe stresses in the middle of his whole year over there that it goes through Seder Ishtalshus, but it goes through very swiftly. It doesn't get held up. So it's got both miles. On the one hand, it's got the mile of being unbelievably bligvul. It's coming from Rav Chesed, but it goes through the Seder Ishtalshus, and therefore it gets into the way that we can receive it. It becomes Momin Gashmi and Yonim Gashmiim and Dvorim Ha'oizim Ha'odam, Gashmi So'ilam, but it goes with a swiftness and nobody can interrupt it. But the Rebbe said it's the union of Bligvul and Gvul in one. There was his amazing ability to merge in Yonim together. The Rebbe reaches that in the short Maimah of Toshin Mem Aleph, and that's an amazing understanding of the matter. And if you look carefully in the Likutei Torah, you'll see that that's Meduya B'diuk Rav. That's what we've got to do for other Yidden. We've got to be Mamshik Rak Toiv Uchesed. We've got to see ourselves as Emes Kohanim, and we've got to do Inyonim which will bring Toiv Uchesed to another Yid, including doing him a Toiv of a Pashtas. If you can help him out and you can do him a favor, then the Baal Shem Tov said that maybe that's the reason he came down into the world, was to do a favor another Yid Begashmir. Maybe that's why you're living the whole 120 years, Lamata here, Bezer Ha'olam, was in order to carry out a teva for another year. And in the meantime, if you're already here, you chaperein all sorts of good sachen, like Torah and mitzvahs and nothing yonim. A dvar pele. And that's also the message of Korach Sivan. That's the union of Korach Sivan. And in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, and the Siddur, the Maimah from the Middle Rebbe, we mentioned about Birchas Kohanim, that everything comes down into Malchus. From the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, he says, from very, very high Madrega, the Kohanim are able to reach up, and they bring all the way down into Malchus, and from Malchus it goes down swiftly into Olam Bi'ah, and like the Rebbe, and like the Alter Rebbe says over there in Likutei Torah, a very similar union that it comes with such tremendous energy, it doesn't get held up by other factors. However, we see that the union is the union of Lamaila Malchus with Davki with Malchus, and once it goes into Malchus and it comes out and it spreads through all of Ishtalshus down Lamata. But if it didn't come into Malchus and stayed Lamaila Malchus, then it wouldn't go on that wondrous traveling downward. So there's a famous sikh in Toshin Nun I think it was Toshin Nun or maybe Nun Aleph, the first time the Rebbe ever came out openly about Korach Sivan, and he made a whole amazing sikha. It's printed in one of the Devar Malchus, I think. It was a famous sikha where the Rebbe came out about Korach Sivan. Who's this? Huh? Came out with Korach Sivan, and the Rebbe said over there that he says openly that there was a Friedrich Rebbe, and then they came along him, even though he didn't say me, but he says, they came along, he who took over, and he who did this, and he who did something else, and there was a tremendous spread out in Afotza Samayoni. It's unmistakable that the Rebbe means himself. And he compares it, he said the Friedrich Rebbe was the union of Yisoid, the last preparation of the Kaveh Mitzvah, the Yud Gimel with Rachmim, and he says the next step is Malchus, and the union of Yisod and Malchus, that's what gives the Shefa out into the world. It spreads out. I mean, it's just an amazing thing. You must read it. I mean, it's just, in my opinion, always looking for all sorts of proofs that the Rebbe said certain things. I mean, it seems to me that sikha is the most open proof, and it's just with all sorts of, Mari Makimes and unbelievable things. And the Rebbe says clearly, he's Sfiras HaMalchus, and Friedrich Rebbe is Yisod, and that's the union which is going to bring to Mashiach. That when there'll be the union of those two Sfiras, Bishleimus, that will bring to the scholars of Melech HaMashiach. But Riches, it's a big beer in the mile of Yisod, or the Friedrich Rebbe, and a big beer in the mile of Malchus, and that's Birchas Kahanim. Das ist mamish the Indian Hamavur when I get to the Mate Aharon, but that's the Indian when you read it into Malchus, and then you spashtes atzuma, in the whole world, misavir. And from guys, that's where we're holding. That's Kof Ches Korach Sivan. Oh, this is the Korach, and that's the Rebbe Sivan. That's the Korach of Matan Torah. Sivan is the month of Matan Torah. The Korach and the emes of Pnimius, the potential that's there in Matan Torah is that union of Yisod and Malchus. And then Malchus' task is to take all the Pnimius of Yisod, the unbelievable Shefa, and to give it over and bring it down mamish into Gashmistic Oilam, that should be Oilam Gashmi, prepared for Melech HaMashiach B'chol Yifanim. And that's what the Baraturim says. It's a very interesting thing. The Baraturim says that Melech HaMashiach is going to be carrying that Matei, and he's going to be carrying the staff of Aaron with the Shkedim on it. He's going to turn all of the views of Yirmiyahu, which they were not so good about the Shkedim, being turned into Marish there. Emes Indian of Shkedim, which is swiftness. We want Moshiach now. And it has to be, how do you call it, swift. And it's got to be with a brand, with a taker. We just have to say, we want Moshiach now. We just have to show that we want. And even if we're a little bit sort of schleppenish that we want, or we just have to know that we want, or even think that we want, is built Yishum Sofik. The Eibusha will be Mekayim, and the Rebbe, when the unbelievable power that he brought into the Kadur Horetz at Chotzi, Kadur Atachtoi, which is America and all that part of the world, that he brought into it by coming and arriving and getting off the ship. And I told one of the guys the other day, just by the way, you should realize that Korach Sivan was the day that the Allied forces started their big invasion against the Nazis. In other words, that the losing of the war on the part of the Nazis began on Korach Sivan. That's when they were completely finished militarily, and otherwise was on Korach Sivan. And that's the day that the Rebbe walked off the boat into America. So we see it was Chesed Golu, it was this Mamish Chesed, Aki Godel, in the world, and it only brought Toiv or Chesed, and the Friedrich Rebbe said a whole thing about Melech HaMashiach, and then he said, you must go and meet my son-in-law, and a whole Riches of Inyanim that leaves no doubt that the union of Yisod and Malchus on that day is such that it's the releasing of that unbelievable power to bring miyad, mahiro, ad mahiro, and therefore we say every day in davening, es tzemach David avtecho mahiro satz miyad. It should be swiftly taken from miyad now.
Chi adinenu Rabbeinu Malach HaMashiach L'Elam Boy.
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 Chi adinenu Rabbeinu